Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Here Ken Leisure with a pass so
Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, a podcast focusing on the trials and tribulations of Carlisle United Football Club. From Greg Abbott to Paul Arneson and Mark Prudo to Jordan Pickford, we've got it covered. This is episode 25 and today we're going to be looking back at United's midweek win over Salford City and the return of fans to Brunton Park, previewing the weekend trip to Yorkshire to face Bradford City, taking a look at the latest news to Brunton Park and looking at what ex-United players have been getting up to. I'm joined on this episode by one of my regular co-hosts, and today it's Mike Booth. Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. Certainly, the midweek result couldn't be better, really, could it?
Oh, no, it's brilliant. And the performance to go with it as well, especially with the fans being back, was fantastic. We'll obviously cover that in a minute, but it just was a really fantastic feeling to be back at Brunton Park watching football again. And I sent an email. I got the train back down to Liverpool after the game, and I had my laptop with me. I was doing a few bits anyway, and I thought I'll send an email. I sent an email to the Football Ramble podcast about how good it was to be back, and they read it out, and it was really nice. And a few people tweeted about it saying, that's how they felt about going back to the game. It's it's not just about the 90 minutes, about seeing people, and your usual routine and that kind of thing. So it really, really was fantastic.
Yeah.
Really quick one here. I'm guessing you know what the link is between the players there.
Yeah, obviously all have been with Carlisle in one shape or form and Bradford.
Indeed, they have. So obviously, Greg Abbott was United manager for quite a while and was a very, very popular player with the Bantams. Paul Arneson had a short spell at Bradford. I think he was quite popular there as well. I think it was just after he left us, wasn't it? And I think he was quite well liked because I think they were back down in League Two back then. Obviously, in League Two now, but we were above them in League One. Yeah. Mark Prudo is a goalkeeper who, basically as journeyman as it gets as goalkeepers go. He played for dozens and dozens of clubs. And Jordan Pickford, I think we obviously all know about him, whatever happened to him.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Exactly that, yeah. All right then, Mike, let's get straight into the news then. First one up, someone's been a naughty boy, haven't they? David Holsworth, the milk tray man, he's been charged by the FA. And it's not for leaving boxes of milk tray in the referee's room. No, it certainly hasn't been. So obviously we discussed, me and Dan, I think it was, David Holsworth going onto the pitch after the Doncaster defeat, and it looked at the time like he'd spoke to Chris Beech, didn't it? And Beech wasn't very happy. It was hard to tell really from the BBC coverage, but turns out it wasn't Beech he was talking to. It was referee Scott Oldham, and he was having a chat with, and it's landing with a bit of bother with the FA. He's been charged with a breach of FA Rule E3. It is alleged that he used abusive and or insulting words toward the match official at the completion of the fixture, and he has until Monday the 7th of December to provide a response. I'll be honest, I was trying to rack my brains here. I can't think of any dodgy decisions in this game, can you?
No, not really. I don't think I've ever been to a game and not been in breach of Rule E3, to be honest with you. But, yeah, there's games where there's been more alarming decisions, surely, but I don't know.
I genuinely was just racking my brains thinking, was there any really terrible decisions given against us? And off the top of my head, no. I thought it was kind of referee where you didn't really notice him, which suggests that he's a good referee and just letting the game flow. And I don't think either team was putting any bad tackles in. I think was there 2 bookings in the game, if that, maybe? It's very bizarre that he was having a bit of a go at the referee. Maybe there was a reason why. Maybe he was told you shouldn't be on the pitch and basically told him where to go. Maybe that was what it was. I don't know. I don't know the details. I'm not going to speculate. Well, I just did, but But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I suspect if he doesn't provide us ones and accepts the charge, he'll probably be banned from going to a couple of games. At least I would have thought maybe. You can always watch it on iPhone like the rest of us. But yeah. The next bit of news this is the most important one though, isn't it, Mike? The EFL bailout has finally been agreed. So a combined fund of £50 million has been set up, with £30 million to be shared among all League One and League Two clubs as a grant. A further £20 million is available as a monitored grant, for which clubs can apply. United will receive a minimum payment of $250,000. They will also receive a further amount from the $30 million grant package based on calculations of lost revenue from last season and this season. Really good news, this, isn't it? This is the kind of positive news we've been hoping for, and it's a big improvement by the sound of things from what we were being offered last time, which was, partly loans and things like that, and clubs are like, look, that's just going to kick the can down the road and cause us problems at a later point. It sounds like this is essentially, you're getting this, every club's going to get this fixed amount, the rest of it is going to be means tested, doesn't it? So it looks good news.
Yeah, and it looks like there's no strings attached either from the outside, but it's quite cryptically worded as well. I mean, it was saying it was decided by Premier League shareholders. Now, what is a Premier League shareholder? Can you buy shares in the Premier League? Or
I think it's similar to the way when a club joins the EFL, they get given a golden share. So Barrow obviously got the golden share this summer from, I think it would have been Macclesfield, I guess, maybe. Possibly Bury's golden share. Anyway, they get the golden share, and there's 72 shareholders, essentially. I think it's probably the same in the Premier League. I think it's a corporate speak way of saying the Premier League clubs, essentially. That's the way they put it.
Because some of these other sort of deals that were mentioned, it said like the Premier League members, and then this time's the first time I've seen the word shareholders, which is that was a bit weird, but maybe that's just me to be
honest, it's not written particularly. It's written in a very legal sort of way, isn't it? When you read it, it's not written to make it easy for fans to understand, essentially, which is not really great. You'd think ideally, with all the worries that clubs have had and things like that it would be good to actually make it easy for fans to understand what this means to them, really. And I mean, we're probably not going to go into too much detail on this, but Nigel Clibbins had some interesting comments on it, didn't he? I think, and he was talking about the fact, we have to look at it carefully and see what it does actually mean. From the outside, he seems to be suggesting it's pretty good, and he's mentioned the fact that obviously the allocation of cash has to be fair. You can't be giving a huge chunk to these clubs who maybe don't have massive wage bills and things like that. So.
Well, I mean, I'd imagine some of the clubs that are now still in Tier 3 and can't have fans in will maybe get more money.
Possibly.
From the more means-tested segments of it. But, who knows? Yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting when you read out, I was reading Nigel Clippers' comments, some really it's good stuff, I suppose, in one sense, is the fact that he's mentioned the fact that some people, staff at the club still have been furloughed during the second lockdown, but also that the senior staff, including himself and Suzanne Kidd, the finance director, have taken pay cuts as well during all this. So, it is a case of we're all in this together. We're not ripping anyone off. And we'll get into a club in the division above us in the X-Files bit about the way they've treated one of their members of staff, which is, on the outside, looking at it it looks pretty disgraceful, doesn't it? That one. We'll get onto that one later. But yeah, it's good news, seemingly, but the club are going to take a good long look at it and work out exactly what it means to them. But great stuff. There was a bit more about iFollow as well, but I think we'll cover that next week in next week's episode, because we want to try and get other bits in today. So let's get straight into the match review bit then, Mike. Carl United 2, Salford City 1. Fans back at Brunton Park for this midweek clash, and United put in a real show with a dominant performance and deserved 3 points against big spending but very underwhelming Salford City side, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we unanimously agreed at the start of the season, didn't we, that they were favourites to the title, and things haven't gone their way this season for one thing or another. But we can only beat what's in front of us, can't we? And it was another great performance. To be honest, we could have had more than the 2 goals. I think, was it Hayden with that chance that they somehow cleared off the line? Yeah,
I think during the game they reported it as Bennett, and Mellish sort of flicked it on, didn't he? Scuffed his shot, and both Hayden and Bennett were waiting at the far post to put it in, and he sort of flicked it with his back heel, didn't he? It was a clever little flick, but it was a brilliant clearance off the line, to be fair.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It's one of those games that we really should have won a bit more comfortably. That's the only real criticism you could probably pick up from this game, I think, really. The fact that we didn't get those extra goals. And maybe, if I'm going to be incredibly picky, that Beech maybe could have made a couple of subs a bit sooner, maybe, to keep the lads' legs fresh.
It's a bit of a running theme.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? But, the thing is, he also gets all the data, doesn't he, from the GPS trackers and things like that they wear, and heart rate monitors that tells him, what their fitness levels are like and if they're dropping off. So he's clearly happy with it. So maybe he's right to keep them on for a bit longer. I don't know, but yeah. So it pushes us back into the playoffs because we dropped out because of Tuesday night's game. So Tranmere jumped above us, didn't they, with their win on their brilliant form they're still on. So it puts us in 5th place on 26 points with a +5 goal difference, and we're just 1 point behind 3rd place Exeter and 4 points off Newport in the top spot. It is so tight at the top of that table right now, isn't it? When you look at it, and I'm just looking at the table now, from 8th place Tranmere to 3rd place Exeter, 4 points separates them.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
And we're about just coming up to pretty much the 1/3 into the season point. The thing is, at this point, you're becoming very close to the halfway point normally. But obviously, we've got more games to cram in later on in the season as well. So yeah, it's. Let's get on to some of the talking points then. And this is one we've sort of vaguely covered a bit recently, but it's who needs the ball. I mean, once again, we were second best in possession, but it didn't really make any difference, did it? At the game itself, I would never have got the impression, maybe other than the last 10-15 minutes, that we had less of the ball than Salford. We
certainly had a lot more chances than them. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's the key thing, isn't it? The stats that matter. We had 23 shots, 7 on target. They only had 10 and 2 on target. Obviously, one of them's the goal. So, so it just shows you the big difference there. Once again, we're getting a shot off every 4 minutes basically in games, which is a really impressive statistic.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting. I think it was Ken Hollock from the London branch posted up a tweet from a website with an image from a website showing a table that shows the average position stats in the division, and we are 3rd bottom in that. I think Cambridge are pretty much down there as well. So it shows us and Cambridge have both got a game where we don't need to have the ball all the time. It's not about possession. It's about when you get the ball, using it well and being direct and getting forward. And we do that so well at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, well, I think I read somewhere last season that Wickham had the worst possession in the entire Football League and they got promoted. So,
you just got to be a well-organised, well-drilled side, don't you? That's the key factor in it. I mean, Salford are clearly a side who want to play with the ball a little bit, don't they? And, they've got decent players and you look through the squad. But, I mean, they didn't get a chance from minute 1, did they? I mean, Callum Guy gets booked in the 2nd minute. And honest, that was a ridiculous decision. He didn't actually catch the lad. The lad went down like he was shot. He was pathetic the whole game. That Arenade, I think it is. But that just shows from minute 1 we were in their faces, and we'll get onto their manager in a minute. But I mean, even he admitted that they just didn't have time on the ball, and we didn't give him that. That's the one little bit of credit he actually gave us during the game. But yeah. So yeah, that's that point covered. I mean, the next one, divine intervention. Nice little title for you there. I think it's fair to say, before the game, when we all saw the team out and there was a change in midfield, I don't think many of us would have expected Danny Devine to be making his full league debut, did we? I think we all felt Dean Furman would come in.
Yeah. But, Devine didn't disgrace himself at all, did he? And I think, obviously we'll get onto it in a bit, but with Guy suspended for the Bradford game, I think Devine will probably get another go. And, he did nothing to say that he doesn't deserve that.
Absolutely. I have to admit, he slotted in seamlessly. He didn't look like a player who was just coming in for his first full start in the league. He looked like a player who'd been playing there for weeks, really. And I was quite impressed. He drives forward with the ball quite well, and he seems to know when to release the ball as well. That's one key thing. Sometimes you find players like that, they just keep going and they don't think about, are you going to pick out a man out wide or are you going to play it down the middle? They just keep going and end up getting tackled. Mellish can be bad for that sometimes, but he's still very much learning playing in midfield. He just looks like he'd been playing there for ages, and I've got a feeling he might get a run in the team now because he just looked. I do like Joe Riley. I do. I think he's got good qualities. What I'd say is he probably looks like a player who'd probably be a bit more comfortable playing in League One than in League Two. And it sounds ridiculous, but I think it's not quite as physical in the same sense, and teams do try and play a bit more, and I think he would suit that a lot more than he would in League Two. Not to say he's played badly recently. I think he's been solid enough, but Devine looks a little bit better suited, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, realistically, there's only one central midfield spot available, isn't there? Because Mellish, if he's fit, one of the first names on the team sheet, and Guy is exactly the same. So there's only that one spot, really, for Devine, Furman and Riley to compete for, really. And to be honest, none of them have looked poor. They're all sort of knocking on the door for that space in the team. So, yeah.
I think with Furman as well, I think for him, you're looking at him more replacing Guy, aren't you? I'm not sure you'd have Furman and Guy in the... I mean, you could do. You could push Guy a bit further forward, possibly. But I think the way that Beech looks at it, I think he sees those two fighting for one place, really, doesn't he? And Dean's obviously going to get his chance potentially at the weekend by the looks of things. Even when he came on, he made a difference as well. He kept the ball well and he used it well and he put his foot in. To have a player like that on the bench is a bit of a luxury at this level, actually, isn't it, when you look back at it? I mean, you sent me something today, didn't you, saying we should maybe look to cash in January because you've been playing on Football Manager, haven't you?
Yeah, and he's worth like 4.2 million on Football Manager, apparently, so, you know.
Look, I'll let everyone in on a secret here. I am the one who does the stats for Football Manager for the Carlisle team, right? I hope none of our players are listening to this because I'll be getting pelters probably. But I am limited to how much good I can make players. Let's just make that very clear. But Furman was transferred in because he came in a bit later and I didn't have a chance to edit him or change anything on him. So he's come in as he was playing in South Africa basically on the game. So that's why he's probably a bit too good. But there you go.
But for me, that midfield three, I mean, a good three-man midfield, you need the one man sitting, you know, who tends to be Guy. You need one man sort of getting forward and doing stuff in the final third, which tends to be Mellish. And you kind of need that third one to sort of...
Like a Shuttler, isn't he?
Just kind of keep things together, you know, sort of be there for that transition. And I feel Furman could do that if, you know, if called upon. And indeed, Guy could do that if you put Devine as the one sitting as well. And Riley has done quite a good job at that as well. So
I was impressed with how mobile Devine was. He covered... It's interesting. I think after the game, Beech said he's like, "Oh, you're the right-footed John Mellish." I think that's trying to encourage him to get into the box and he got a couple of shots off. To be fair to him as well, he's one of those players when we sign him. I think probably of all the signings, he's the one that I think most people probably the least enthusiastic about. I'm not saying anyone thought, "Oh, he's rubbish." Everyone's just like, he's just a squad player, isn't he? But I think he's shown that he can come in and, you know, if he plays well on Saturday against his former club, and we've got a big run of games coming up now. You could stay in the team for a while.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that about like enthusiasm for signings because we didn't really make many what you would call sort of marquee signings. There was a few that were sort of, you know, no disrespect, you know, the likes of sort of Riley, Tanner, you know, kind of unproven in men's football. You know, they played a little bit, even sort of, you know, going back to last season, the likes of Callum Guy, he hadn't played a ton of men's football, and you're just thinking, who are these players? But I tell you what, we've built one hell of a team, and you know, Devine is sort of a proven sort of football league player, wasn't he? Really, who sort of you kind of knew what you were getting a little bit more than maybe some of the other players, but they all seem to have paid off. Yeah.
Well, let's move on then to another signing, one that came in much more recently than Devine, Royce Bennett. So. You might remember last season, Mike, and we had many chuckles about this, that David Holsworth described Christy Elliott as a Rolls-Royce player. You know, maybe one that's in the knackers yard by the looks of things, the way he's playing. Although he's doing quite well in Scotland now, by all accounts, so maybe he's just better suited up there.
I could do all right in Scotland, I
think. Let's not get hasty on that one. But, you know, if he'd actually waited a year, you could have got that description right to describe Reece Bennett because he's just been brilliant since he come in, hasn't he? I mean, I think it's one of those ones. Devine got the man of the match against Salford, and I understand why. Lad coming in for his debut, has a pretty good, solid game. You want to give him a nice confidence boost. I totally understand why you do that. I think there's an argument that Tanner was probably the best player on the pitch, but I think running him pretty close, Bennett was just everything that came to him. He was just so calm, so collected. The amount of times the ball came over the top and it came down, and you'd normally expect a big booming header away, and he either just played a nice little cushioned header down to Guy or chested it down a couple of times to Guy or even brought it down and brought himself out of the defence. He's just so... And he's just far too good for this level, isn't he?
Oh, definitely. He reads the game really well as well. And I think Rod McDonald's a little bit unlucky, really, because he was sort of playing pretty well, but when someone like... like Bennett comes available, you can't not want to sign him up, and he's been absolutely fantastic.
I mean, we are quite well blessed in defence right now, aren't we, for players? I mean, the only position you'd maybe argue is that there's a slight question mark over, we've discussed this before, is left back. Maybe Nick Anderton's looking the slightly weak. I don't think he's played particularly poorly either, to be honest. I don't think Jack Armour... I think the difference there is I don't think Jack Armour's ready to push Anderton for his position there. Whereas I think on the right, Tanner knows that Joe Riley can drop in there and play right back, and there's a slight bit of pressure possibly there. Even arguably, that's only a second position for Riley, isn't it? So it's one of those ones. We are doing pretty well in defence, I think, in terms of centre backs. I mean, Max Hunt, I feel bad for him. He came in as this sort of, like I said, maybe not marquee signing, but someone a lot was thought of when he arrived in January, and he's not really had that many chances so far, just because the way it's landed. We've got to get Bennett tied up though if we can, don't we? On a longer
definitely. I mean, if we can get him till the end of the season, that's crucial for our promotion chances. I think
we'll have done well if we manage to get him tied down there. I mean, I've heard whispers that he's if it's a League Two or potentially even League One club, he's happy to stay. But I think he's got his eye on maybe a bigger wage at the top end of League One and potentially the Championship if he can. And you wouldn't blame him for that. Every player's got to take the best possible. He's 29 now. He's got to take the best possible deal he can. But at the same time, I'd imagine he's enjoying his football right now. So exactly. It's one of those ones, isn't it? It's one of those ones. Diabolical refereeing. We've got to talk about this. It's strange because as a talking point for games, we sort of briefly touched in some games on bad refereeing, haven't we? But we haven't really talked about an absolutely awful refereeing performance yet this season. Well, step up our old friend, Mr. Graham Salisbury. He's been around for donkey's years now, and he just hasn't got any better. The way he struts about the pitch, it just makes you want to... I better be careful what I say here now, but alongside his assistants, he was handing out cards like it was Christmas. Funny that, isn't it? That first booking for Guy was ridiculous. That set the tone. That was the biggest problem. He could have easily said to Guy there, because he didn't. If anyone watches it back, Guy doesn't actually catch the lad. He sort of just stops off, and he may have just knocked into him, but he's not gone in and kicked him or anything like that. He could have easily said to Guy, look, don't do another one of them or I will book you. And that would have been fine. That would have set a slightly lower tone for the way he was going to hand out cards for the game. But he was just straight in there, and you knew he was so happy to give it as well. It's just ridiculous. Just some of his decisions was really peculiar, weren't they? I mean, some of them, two of the bigger ones were in our favour, you'd argue. Well, one of them obviously wasn't his decision in a sense. So the biggest one probably is the equaliser they scored that was ruled out for offside. When you watch back and you look at the free throw and the ball was played, it is incredibly tight. I can't 100% say he's onside. It looks like he is, but the camera angle can be a bit misleading sometimes. You really need a side on from the edge of the 6-yard box or the 18-yard box to actually see.
I feel like if it was us scoring the goal, we'd maybe feel a bit hard done by.
If it was us, I'd be furious about it. I really would, because it does look a poor decision. The other bad decision, this one was the referees potentially, was Mellish getting a booking. That was a pretty reckless tackle, that one. He almost catches him knee high and he sort of dives in. It's nearly too far. I need to see it again because I haven't managed to see it again yet. But in real time, on the paddock side where it happened, me and Greg Bullman, who I was standing next to it again, sort of both looked at each other like, could be in trouble here. He's taken a long time over this. And I think once he took really long time before, he probably is given a booking here. But again, it's one of those ones, if it was against us, I'd probably be a bit unhappy that he hadn't been sent off. He just wasn't a good referee performance, was it?
No, but I don't always mind if they're incompetent, but their incompetence kind of affects both teams. I've been a firm believer for many years that there's like a deep conspiracy at FA headquarters where they don't like the long journey up to Carlisle and they just try and give a lot of decisions against us so that we get relegated eventually. But
you wonder. I mean, he only lives in Preston, Salisbury, I think, doesn't he? And I think Beech was having a chat with him at half time. Somebody came off. They seem to know each other fairly well because Beech is obviously from down that way. But yeah, I mean, I'd say the two worst decisions were in our favour, so we can't really grumble too much. But then there was a couple more, like I said, the Guy booking was ridiculous. Coyote getting booked as well, I think that was a ridiculous one. He barely touched the lad. And there was one where the defender, Clark, went into the back of Coyote and the ball went out and Coyote hadn't touched it. And it was one of two things. It was either a free kick to us or it was a throw-in to us. And he gave a throw into them.
Yeah.
And just like, where on earth have you got that from?
Yeah.
Just madness. So yeah, the first time this season we've had a chance to have a proper good rant about a dreadful referee, but but there you go. We've got the 3 points, so we shouldn't really grumble too much.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, briefly, a couple more bits. I haven't put these in the talking points, mate, but we'll cover them anyway. Their manager, isn't it enjoyable to see Richie Wellens looking miserable after a game?
Yeah. Did he have his abysmal shoes on?
His dreadful trainers with that sort of cream sort of bit on the bottom of them. Yeah, he did have those on. It was absolutely shocking. But yeah, him and I think it's Warren Joyce is the assistant, and Chris Casper is the sporting director there. Constantly in the fourth official's ear, just wouldn't shut up for the whole game. But didn't do them much good in the end as it was.
No.
But yeah, after the game, he was. It's interesting to read his comments after the game. But I always think Beech is sometimes a little bit too kind on our players, and sometimes could say, it's not a good performance and they need to do better and stuff. But I'm glad he doesn't go as far as Wellens went, because he basically just tore into his team, didn't he? He was basically, I mean, slagging off a young lad like Luke Armstrong as well. He's 22, 23, something like that. Basically saying he came on and he was rubbish for the first half, didn't do anything, didn't do enough, and he's just like, oh, come on, Yeah, they didn't play well, but he didn't once think so. Big difference was they were more aggressive. They were in their face, and they made it difficult for us. He didn't really say that, did he? And
no,
he's always come across as arrogant, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he kept saying, "I'm not making excuses," and then made an absolute ton of excuses. But
exactly
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah, he mentioned, obviously, I didn't cover this in the referee, but the Ian Henderson injury, that he went off injured, and I think it took about 10 minutes before they finally made the sub. Interesting watching that one back. I haven't had a chance to watch it back yet, but in real time, potentially what happens is a long ball comes over the top. Hayden goes up to win the header, and what Henderson tries to do, he basically puts his head where Hayden's arm is, I think, to try and get him in trouble, get him booked or sent off or something, and ends up injuring himself and giving away a free kick. Free kick was given in our favour, and he had to go off with his damaged nose and couldn't come back, or damage on his head and couldn't come back on because they couldn't get the stitch in. So, tough shit there, mate. And the final bit, we just got to touch on it, is fans back at game. How good was that? Just actually hear a crowd when a goal goes in.
I have to say, it was weird when you watch the highlights and Salford score and just isn't a peep. But when we score, there's a big loud cheer. Yeah,
it didn't feel like there was just 2,000 there. I mean, I went up to the game because obviously I'm lucky enough that I live in a tier 2 area, so I can actually travel up still to games. And when you walk down, it was a lot quieter. But I think people are obviously arriving to games differently and spreading out the time they arrive and stuff like that. Getting into the ground, plenty of space in the paddock, everyone's spaced out. It was really good, well organised. It almost felt like just going to a game normally. It didn't feel 100% different, but it just felt so good to be in there and having a chat with people I haven't seen in months. And I mean, I got to see my brother for the first time in 3 or 4 months, I think, maybe. I haven't seen him in person for ages, so that was really nice as well. It was just so enjoyable just to go to a game and be able to enjoy it.
I have to say as well, I think when Bennett scored his goal, I think he wanted to just run into the crowd and sort of do all that, and then he sort of realised and thought, oh no, actually, I can't do that.
Yeah. We should actually mention before we finish the review bit as well, what a goal from Luis Alessandro as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, how could we not mention that? Yeah.
Weaker foot, but he's so good on both feet, and we mentioned it last week, but I'll just touch on it again. We look so much better team when he plays. Yeah. The ball stuck to him up against 2 big centre-backs. He basically gave that young lad on loan from Man United, Deshaun Bernard, an absolute footballing lesson, didn't he? He showed him this is what a good striker at this level will do to you. He'll hold the ball off. He'll play the ball. He knew when to play it. He linked play so well. We look better if he's playing. I don't really mind Coyote going out wide because I think it looks better when Luis Alessandro's there because Patrick and Coyote can then play it off him. We look so much better.
It blows my mind, to be honest. I know he's played quite a lot at League One level, but it blows my mind that he hasn't really played much at a higher level. Because sometimes we get players in, and you can just tell that they're from a higher level. Do you know what I mean? Like Bennett, for example.
Yeah.
And Alessandro, his intelligence on the ball is just second to none. It really is.
I can only wonder if it's just his lack of goals is the only reason he's never really been given a chance at a higher level. Because, like you say, he looks like a player who could comfortably play in the Championship with his ability on the ball to hold it up and bring others into play. And full credit to him. I think start of the season we had a sort of feeling, he might only be a squad player really this season. But at the moment, you'd pick him every game. He's playing that well, and he makes a difference to the team. So I imagine he's going to be starting against Bradford at the weekend. So
yeah, definitely. But as well as lack of goals, you wouldn't sort of attribute it to a lack of finishing ability on his part. But he's more sort of at the start of the move, so he's not in the box when the chance happens. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't get a ton of chances for him to fluff. Really, that's not why he's got a lack of goals. He's just always creating things rather than getting on the end of things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that's pretty much covered it, Mike. Is there anything else you want to talk about from the Salford game?
No, I think we've covered it, haven't we?
Just a really enjoyable 3 points, and like I said, if they're supposed to be one of the promotion contenders, then we should be right up there at the end of the season, because we were comfortably the better side in this game.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the end of part 1 then, Mike. So we'll be back very shortly to discuss for part 2, where we're going to be looking ahead to the weekend trip to West Yorkshire to play Bradford City. Okay, welcome back everyone. We're into part 2 now, and we're going to be looking ahead to our trip across the Pennines and into Yorkshire to face the surprise early strugglers in League 2, Bradford City. I think in the pre-season preview, Mike, I think me, you and Dan all agreed that they probably didn't do enough transfer work in the summer to say they were going to be in contention for the playoffs.
See, that's where you're wrong, because I stuck my neck on the line and said that I thought they might do well this season.
Did I think it was me and Dan that both said we felt they just didn't do enough work to justify them being in the top 7. But I don't think even me and Dan would have predicted that they would have been third bottom after a third of the season. It's quite incredible how badly they've done, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some big names in the squad, even without a lot of recruitment. The likes of like Lee Novak and part of the summer recruitment. Elliot Watt, I thought would be a brilliant signing for them. Obviously, who we had last season. Yeah. But what do we know? Yeah,
exactly that. Well, we'll get onto their squad in a bit. We'll go through the usual routine on this one. So, some history and facts. It's interesting, this. I didn't realise this bit. So, Bradford City were formed in 1903 to introduce the sport of football to the West Riding of Yorkshire. Because predominantly, I think most people know this, that area is very much a rugby league area, isn't it? You've got your Leeds Rhinos and your Bradford Bulls and that sort of thing. Obviously, Bradford Bulls on a bit of hard times these days. Before they'd even played a game, they were elected into the Football League to replace Doncaster Rovers in Division 2. Incredible, that, isn't it? Most clubs start off, playing in your local leagues or in like North East League or the North West League or something like that. But bang, straight into the Football League. Obviously, there was a Bradford club before then, wasn't there? Because I think Bradford Park Avenue were a little bit older than them. They were in the Football League in the early years. But quite amazing that they went straight in, and they actually moved straight into their Valley Parade ground, and they've been there ever since. They've not had another ground, which is, again, quite... We've done these ones in recent weeks where they've played at 3 or 4 different grounds and had, years in the Cheshire League and stuff like that before getting up. Bang, they were straight into it, and they won their first promotion just 5 years after joining the league, winning Division 2 as champions. And then, incredibly, just 3 years after that, they won the FA Cup in 1911. That's just like a ridiculous turnaround in terms of success. They spent 15 years in the top flight, and then they were relegated back to Division 2 and then down to Division 3 not long after that. After bouncing back a few years later, they went back to the 3rd tier just prior to World War II, and they remained in either the 3rd or 4th tier for quite a while after that, until 1985 when they won promotion. But tragedy struck at their promotion celebrations that season. Because I think everyone knows the story about this if you're a football fan. A fire tore through the main stand at Valley Parade during the final game against Lincoln City. 56 fans lost their lives, including 2 fans from Lincoln City. Because I don't know if you know this, Mike, that there's a stand at Lincoln's ground called the Stacey West stand. And that's not someone called Stacey West. It's actually the 2 surnames. I can't remember the first names are. The first name Stacey and first name West. So the stand there is actually named after those 2 Lincoln fans who lost their lives in the fire. Yeah, so they lost their 56 fans lost their lives that day. Former United boss and Bantam's favourite Greg Abbott actually played that day. And I remember there's an interesting article, if you look on the News and Star site, if you can search for it. He talks about his experience that day, and it's quite a moving article when you read it and the experience they went through. And I think anyone who's done a bit of fire safety training at any sort of job has probably seen the video of the fire and how quickly it takes control. It is absolutely astonishing. It's one of the most heartbreaking things you can possibly see. Within minutes, the whole stand's on fire, isn't it? It's pretty harrowing. They finally made it back into the top flight in 1999 after a 77-year absence. They managed 2 seasons in the Premier League before being relegated back to Division 1, and what followed after that was quite a few years of financial hardship, and partly brought on by the ill-fated ITV Digital era of the Football League, and we all remember that, wasn't it? And what an absolute mess that was. What I remember about that, funny enough, is that I appeared on ITV Sport in a Carl United fans team on a short-lived quiz show called Do I Not Know That, hosted by Simon O'Brien of Brookside fame. Simon O'Brien actually works in my workplace now. He's the cycling commissioner for the Liverpool City region. I keep meaning to go up and ask him, say, do you remember that show you did on ITV Sport? He'd probably say, yeah, I didn't get paid for it because I didn't know what ITV Sport were like back then. But
we need to find video footage of this.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it because, quite ridiculously, I went down to appear in it with 4 other Carlisle fans, including my mate Simon, who listens to this. He'll remember this. We got put up in a hotel one night. I think it was the Thistle Hotel in the middle of Manchester, a very posh one. We were only 15. I think it would have been 2000, 2001, around about then, maybe 2002. Anyway, we went down round about then, put up in this hotel, filmed over, I think, 3 or 4 episodes over 2 days. You're up against fans of other teams, and there's buzzer rounds, and then there's like individual rounds where someone goes up, whatever. Amazingly, you couldn't get ITV Digital in West Cumbria. So I've never seen it. I've never seen a recording of it. I did basically there's a specialist round where one person from the team goes up and does a specialist subject on something to do with the club. I think I did Carl United the previous season, basically. I mean, it would have been 2000, 2001. And stats to do with that, and I only got 2 questions wrong. I was really annoyed because one of them I knew the answer, and I panicked and said, I think it was something like who's made the most appearances for United that season, and I think I said Mark Birch, and I think it was Stuart Whitehead. So I was absolutely furious with myself. But anyway, gone off a bit of tangent there, really. But if anyone out there, by some miracle, did record that and still has that recording, please let me know, because I would genuinely love to see it and see how it actually went. Because it was a funny old experience, that one. I've got some stories about walking around the Granada studios and what we saw, but I'll leave that for another podcast maybe. I'll tell you that one after the episode, Mike, just for you. Okay. So in 2013 they became the first club from the 4th tier since Rochdale in 1962 to make it to the League Cup final. They're actually the first team who did it in the area when it was held at Wembley, because I think in the very early days, I think it might have been Old Trafford or Villa Park or something like that, it was held at. It wasn't taken quite as seriously. But it didn't go particularly well for them. They lost 5-0 to Premier League side Swansea City in the final. They did beat some big teams on the way there. I think they beat Arsenal 3-2 on penalties, I think.
They beat Chelsea, I think, as well, didn't they?
I think that might have been the FA Cup a few years later, possibly.
Okay. Yeah.
But they definitely built Arsenal. I think they beat Aston Villa as well, actually, on the way there too. So it's not like, they played a load of dross on the way to the final. They played some really good teams, and I think that actually helped get them back on a good financial footing, because they struggled for a few years, I think, around about that point. So yeah. Okay, then let's get on to celebrity fans then, Mike. So, following on from Louis Tomlinson for Doncaster the other week, Bradford have another One Direction member supporting them, Zayn Malik. Other celeb fans include Emmerdale actor Duncan Preston, singer Gareth Gates, film producer Steve Abbott, famous for Brastoff and A Fish Called Wanda, and this is the best of a lot. And I think this might be one of my favourites this season, even probably more favourite than Half Man Half Biscuit for Tranmere.
I think we should stop doing the feature after this, because we're never going to top this next one, are we?
The Dalai Lama. Is it His Holiness? Is that what you used to describe him? I presume it is.
I haven't a clue.
The Dalai Lama himself is a Bradford City fan. I think it's probably stretching it to say he's a Bradford City fan. I think someone basically got him to wish them good luck before that League Cup final against Swansea, funny enough. There's a picture of him posing with the shirt. We'll put it up in the tweet when we put the episode out. Didn't do them much good though. They lost 5-0 in the final, so clearly he's how close he is to the whoever the man upstairs is for the Dalai Lama. I don't know. I'm not going to try and pretend I know anything about all that. I'd probably offend someone if I did say something wrong. So let's move on very very quickly from that and on to the head-to-head. Not particularly great in our favour, this one. So we've played them, I think. Let me just work this out in my head quickly. I think it's 58 times. We've won 17, 14 have been draws and 21 games we've lost. Our record at Valley Parade is pretty dreadful as well, actually, when you look back. Last time we won there was in, let me get this up, I think it was 1974 in the League Cup. We beat them 1-0. Now, we would have been a top flight side then, and they would have been either a third division or a fourth division. I'm not sure which one. But yeah, fair to say our record there is pretty dire, to say the least. I don't think their record's much better at Brunton Park, to be fair. But in the last, since we first played them again recently in 2006, we've played them 8 times and we've won 4 times, drawn 2 and lost 2. So record in recent times isn't quite as bad. Last time we met them was on Boxing Day last season. We played quite an entertaining 0-0 draw, actually. It wasn't a bad game, this one. Decent crowd, I think about 8,000 there maybe. But the thing that stands out from this game, this was Jared Branfoyt's last performance for the club, last appearance, and he put in a man of the match performance, and he was outstanding. I mean, he was still only just 17 at this point, and you could just see he was too good for that level. And I think he picked up a knock, funny that, and then didn't play for us again after that. So there you go.
It's a shame his knock wasn't a little bit more severe, and then he couldn't pass a medical at Everton. But never mind.
Yeah, to be honest, that money worked out pretty well in the end for us, didn't it, for this season?
Yeah,
so
it did.
Shouldn't grumble too much about it.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, well, let's talk about the up-to-date things to do with Bradford City. So, like I said, I don't think any of us could have predicted how badly they would have started this season, really, could we? As it stands, they're currently 22nd place in League 2, 17 places and 13 points behind United on 13 points. Their records are half as many points as us, which is unbelievable, really. Their record so far is played 14, won 3, drawn 4 and lost 7. They've got 14 goals for and 19 goals against them. I mean, they don't even average a goal a game. Well, they average exactly a goal a game, which is, not particularly great. The goal difference is -5. Currently in the form table for the last 6 games, they're 21st, with 1 win, 1 draw and 4 defeats. In midweek, they went down to a 2-1 home defeat to Cheltenham, even though they took the lead after 23 minutes in this game. Their last win came against fellow struggler Southend, and this is interesting when I was looking through who they'd actually won their games against. They've won game against Southend, who were 24th, Stevenage, who were 23rd, and Mansfield, who were 19th.
Yeah.
They're only doing it against some of the poorer teams, which is probably good for them because it keeps them away from trouble. But I mean, Mansfield are surging up the table a bit at the moment, aren't they? Under Nigel Clough, they've had a little bit of run of form because they were right down at the bottom, weren't they? But yeah, they're not doing particularly well. That win against Southend came at the start of November as well, so they haven't won a game since then. I think the only game they've won since then was against Tunbridge Angels in the FA Cup first round. So yeah, not great going for them. Currently.
No, but I have to say it would be absolutely Carlisle United to beat the team who are the bookies' favourites for the league title in midweek and then fail to beat the team that's 23rd in the table a couple of days later. I
look forward to hearing your prediction in a minute, Mike, because I've got a funny feeling I know where that's going, possibly with that prediction, that little sentence. So their manager, Stuart McCall, he's a legendary former player who made over 400 appearances in 2 spells with the club. It's actually his 4th spell if you include his 1 caretaker role in 2000. I think back when they're in the Premier League, actually. So it's his 4th spell as manager of the club. Things have not gone well for him this season, but despite that, the board have shown a bit of faith. They gave him a 1-year extension to his contract last 2 or 3 weeks ago, which means he's now signed up until the summer of 2022. Quite brave from the Bradford board to do that. They clearly have a bit of faith in him to turn things around, don't they?
Yeah, which seems balmy, but maybe he's got some something on the board that we don't know about. Who knows?
It's one of those ones, isn't it? They've gone back to him 3 times now. You wonder, did he sell some of these clubs? The lack of imagination at board level sometimes. Yeah, as a club, we're quite good for that. Actually, we don't. I mean, there was talk McDonald was going to come back, wasn't there, a while back, a couple of times ago. But generally, we do either promote someone from within or we try something different. Yeah, we don't usually go back. So
I think Tranmere have to be the record holders with Ronnie Moore, the amount of times that he's gone back there.
There's another club. I mean, if you're going beyond England, is it Fatih Terim's been manager of Galatasaray about a dozen times or something like that? They just every time they just seem to go back to him. Martin Allen, obviously at Barnet, he seems to go back there every time, doesn't he? Gets the chance, but despite not making too many signings in summer, you said this before, mate. their squad does look strong, and in attack especially, when you look at the options they've got there, Clayton Donaldson, Lee Novak, Billy Clark, Curtis Guthrie, that's not the sort of attack that should be in a relegation battle, is it?
No,
really.
Exactly. But
And as you mentioned as well, we saw how good Elliot Watt was last season. They maybe not using him right, they're maybe not getting the best out of him, I don't know, but you wouldn't say right now that we're missing him at Carlisle, would you?
No, certainly not. I mean, Callum Guy's set pieces have created a few goals for us, haven't they? I mean, yeah.
Maybe direct shots we maybe miss him for that sort of thing from set pieces. He didn't actually score one for us, did he? But there you go.
No, I think he did. Did he not score like an overhit cross?
It was overhit cross was the goal he scored for us, Elliot Watt. But I think he went close to scoring on a couple of free kicks, whereas I don't think we've looked anywhere near scoring a direct free kick this season.
It's crazy, really. You know, we went from having Danny Granger, who's possibly the best free kick taker,
and Jamie Devitt
and Jamie Devitt at the same time, two absolutely brilliant free kick takers. And then now, where are we?
Yeah, well, every time we're touching off free kicks for Anderton to hit or something like that, and it just isn't working, really. It's probably the only one area of the team maybe you'd say we could do some big improvement there.
But maybe Brennan Dickinson will bring that when he's fit.
That's the key thing, isn't it? I think once you get him fit as well, you keep forgetting it. You're only about 3 or 4 weeks away before he'll be back in the squad, hopefully. So, yeah, it's good news, that. We obviously mentioned that Elliot Watt is a former player of ours, but there actually is a second former player there. Some people might not realise this. Ben Richards-Everton was part of our youth setup under Eric Kinder about 10, 12 years ago. In fact, no, about 10 years ago. So I think I was actually at the club then, working at the club in the media team. A player who had ability. I think there was just questions about his attitude and whether he really wanted it, and he was prepared to knuckle down. And full credit to the lad. He went away. I think it was Romulus, something like that, and then he went to Tamworth, and he's worked his way back into the league. He went to Accrington, didn't he? And now he's at Bradford, and he's a settled player then. I think he's one of their best players, isn't he? So fair play to the lad. Team news. So yeah, let's get on to that for United. Callum Guy's going to miss out through suspension, although there was some questions over whether he maybe would have been rested with, a knock potentially. But all the sounds of things from Beech was saying, he wasn't quite as bad as we expected in the end.
No, but he's had a couple of little knocks this season, so I actually think being suspended might do him a bit of a favour, just give him a week to rest. It's not like we haven't got capable replacements, like we were discussing earlier with Devine and Furman.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those ones, isn't it? It's a good opportunity in a strange way, but I'm sure he's a bit gutted guy because he's a former Bradford player as well, isn't he? And I think he would have liked the chance to show them what they're missing. I mean, we could have put a midfield out there of entirely former Bradford players, couldn't we? Riley, Furman and Guy. We could have easily have done that. In fact, sorry, Riley, Furman, Guy and Devine. We've got 4 midfielders who all play for Bradford at some point. So
and Patrick, obviously he's a striker, but
I'm sure he'll be definitely able to prove a point in this game. Other than that, in terms of injuries, Rod McDonald, I think possibly next weekend it looks like he might be back for, hopefully. And then just Conor Malley's out a little bit longer, and Brennan Dickinson and Ethan Walker probably not till start of January for those two, by the looks of things. Maybe Walker a little bit longer than Dickinson. We've not really had a massive update on that one, have we? So
no.
Yeah, in terms of Bradford team news, spotted a little bit just now. It looks like Lee Novak's not going to be fit enough to play in the game. He's been out, I think, for 10 weeks possibly. And they were hoping it would be back for this game, but they think it's just going to be too much of a gamble to bring him back for this one. Just quickly scanning down here to see if anything else. So they had Gareth Evans came back into the side on Saturday. They're hoping, I think, to have basically the same players available for this game as they had for the Cheltenham game. So it'll be interesting to see what side they put out. Predictions. Go on, Mike.
Well, you know what? Despite what I said before, we should be beating these, but I reckon it'll be quite a cagey game. So I'm going to go 1-0 Carlisle, and I'm going to go for Aaron Hayden with the goal.
Oh, very good. I'm going to go for 2-1. 2-1 win, I should say there. I think Amari Patrick's going to score against his former club. And John Mellish. He's got to get back on the wagon sooner or later. In fact, no, I'm not going to say John Mellish, actually. I've changed my mind now because I've said him for a few weeks and he's not scored now. So, I'm going to go Aaron Hayden as well, yeah. Why not? Patrick and Hayden will get the goals in this one, I think. There's our predictions. Okay, let's get on to the X-Files then, Mike. So, A little bit quiet for the midweek goals this week, wasn't there? So last couple of ones has been a lot, but this week just a few. Ryan Bowman, he's on quite a run of scoring, isn't he? He seems to be finding the net every week at the moment. He scored again for Exeter. Ryan Loft scored for Scunthorpe, and he was set up by Alex Gilead for that goal. Was it Harrogate they beat midweek 5-2? Harrogate's form's really dropped off the cliff in the last few games, hasn't it? They just seem to be struggling a little bit now after that flying start. But that start's been quite good for them. It's given them a little bit of breathing space to sort themselves out, whereas Barrow have never got off to that start in comparison, have they? So yeah. And the only other goal was Naki Wells for Bristol City. The only other bit of former player news is, this is an interesting one. This is one probably for a bit older fans here. Some might remember John Cook, who was a player played for United. I'm just going to double check when it was here, because I'm not 100% on it. He's before my time, to say the least. So John Cook, he was a winger we had on loan from Sunderland in the mid-80s, in the 84-85 season. Played 6 games, scored 2 goals. He did pretty well during his loan spell. He came back as well permanently a year later, and played 106 games and scored 11 goals. So the club he played most of his games for was United, to be fair. But after he retired, he went back to Sunderland and got a job as kitman in 1994. Now, he'd been in that role for 25 years, but then he was furloughed when the League One season for Sunderland was brought to an abrupt halt last season. Rather than bring him back when football started again, so I think he might have came back in September briefly, but then he was furloughed again, and they started using their under 23 kit manager Steve Aziz. Didn't say anything about it. I'm guessing Cook's on more money than the under 23 kit manager, and that's probably why. And essentially, what they've done on the quiet is basically made him redundant. Not announced anything. A popular former player, and someone who has been at the club for 25 years, popular with the players, and they've essentially said, "We don't need you anymore." And I think it sounds like he's potentially going to take some legal action against the club, from what he's saying. And he's been under 17 different managers in that time. That's astonishing, isn't it?
That's crazy.
The interesting bit that makes it look a little even worse for Sunderland is that his dad passed away in March in the run-up to Sunderland's home game against Gillingham. But he insisted on working that game against Gillingham. And when Kyle Lafferty scored in that game, Lafferty and the rest of the squad demonstrated how much they like Cook, and they all ran over and celebrated with Cook after he scored the first of his 2 goals in that game. He actually then missed the next game against Bristol Rovers a few days later because he had family matters to attend to, as you'd imagine you would, when your dad's just passed away. And then that trip to the Southwest was actually the last game they played before the League One season was brought to a halt. So essentially, I don't think he's been back since. So it's a pretty shoddy way to treat someone, isn't it? And it just brings into good light the work that United have done, isn't it, during all of this, and not made anyone redundant, and made sure people have been getting their wage and stuff like that through the furlough system. And not particularly great stuff from Sunderland, but having watched that Sunderland Till I Die documentary, does it really surprise you that much? Maybe not. Maybe not. There you go. I think that's it for this week, isn't it, Mike? Is there anything else you wanted to add? I'm not really sure.
No, I think we've covered all bases, haven't we?
Yeah, so big game this weekend, chance to keep pressure on and potentially move into the top 3. We've been in the top 3 this season. I don't think we have we? Or maybe briefly we have.
I think briefly, but then a team with a later kick-off is...
Possibly, yeah, that would make sense, yeah. So we mentioned in the last episode, in terms of specials, me and Dan are hopefully going to get to record the Kits one next week. And I think the aim is over Christmas, we're going to try and get a couple of them out, to tide things over, because we've got those games coming thick and fast over Christmas. So what we might do is, before the Boxing Day game, we'll probably do a preview for both that and for the Harrogate game. Try and fit the 2 in, because otherwise it's going to be too tight to try and turn around 2 in the space of a few days. What we might do, we might try and get both Dan and Mike on one episode, and we can all have a chat together about how the season's gone so far. Maybe it might be a good way to do things, but there you go. So if you've got any comments, feedback, as usual, please contact us. There's various methods you can do it. So we're on Twitter at Brunton Bugle, and email bruntonbugle@gmail.com, and we're all 3 of us are on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group, and we're always chatting on there. We always like the comments we get from people about the podcast. It's been really, really great to get all the good feedback from you all there. If you listen to us, you probably have done this already, but if you haven't, please do subscribe to the podcast. That means every time we release a podcast, it'll go straight into your app, whatever you use. So you can use either Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any podcast app. Generally, we're probably going to be on there. If we're not, please do contact us and we'll try and get it sorted so it can appear on there, because there's ways of doing that. If you just search for Brunton Bugle and then click subscribe, and it'll come in every time we release one. As well as that, if you can give us a review on any of those podcast apps, and 5-star reviews are always really, really welcome. That'd be really, really appreciated. Come on then, Mike, let's have a quick look and see if there's any new places on the map. I always leave this to the last minute just in case. Just in case we've got an extra listener in there. Looking at it, it doesn't look like we've got a new country. Oh. Just that one listen in Bahrain, where you nearly killed someone at the F1. No new ones in there. I have been contacted by our Luxembourg listener, and it is actually someone I know. So it's just nice to see people are listening to us all over the world. We'll be back towards the end of next week. No midweek game. It's nice to have a little break, isn't it, for once, because we've been hectic getting all these in. But we'll be back at the end of next week, won't we, Mike? It'll be either you or Dan joining me, and we'll be looking ahead to home game against Stevenage. I think's the next one, isn't it? Next weekend. So that again, we've got 2 games coming up here. Potential chance to get 6 points. Am I getting ahead of myself here? I don't know.
Well, on paper, absolutely, but Carlisle United do not play football on paper, do they?
Never do. Cheers, Mike. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Cheers.